You're listening to the Perth Property Show, Australia's only weekly property podcast by West Australian experts for West Australian listeners. Catch your latest episode every Monday at 7 a.m.
Good morning, guys. Welcome to the Perth Property Show. My name's Trent Fleskins, your host as always. Today we've got Brendon Ptolomey back in the studio talking about the regional market. And before I say hello to you, Brendon, I just want to say to everyone out there, thank you so much for listening along. We have hit massive milestones in terms of our listenership recently. And if you love the show and you've been listening every week, share it out to all your friends. Property is the talk of the town right now. I think it's become the water cooler conversation. It's become the barbecue conversation again. And a lot of people will be looking for good quality information. There's no better quality information than listening to Brendon Ptolomey from Heron Todd White. Brendon, thanks for coming back in, mate.
Cheers, Trent. Thank you. Well, I want to do a shout out to the episodes that you did with Rita Safiotti. I think you did an amazing job there.
Oh, thank you.
Rita was really open for the discussion too. She needs to be commended for coming in and openly talking about those planning laws. So I thought it was really insightful. I reckon our valuers need CPD points when they listen to that
along.
one. Yeah.
Well, point here is it's going to structurally change the way we build
Yep.
and develop and provide urban infill. The triplex will be no longer, I think, a year from now, or the way it is with a one story on smaller blocks.
Yep.
It will be shifted towards townhouses and a lot more of the stuff you see in Europe, the maisonette living, the 3 or 4 large family apartments in one mansion. We're being pushed that way, and I think it's for the better. It's just going to create some structural pain along the way, I think.
Yeah. And obviously Rita's job is to try and educate the population as to what's coming, and obviously also the developers as to what's possible. Yeah.
Well, I think it would be a good thing that it moves, and the people who educate themselves quick enough on how to move with it will be the ones that win. But we're not talking about that today. We're talking about the regional market again.
Yeah.
It's been probably 4 or 5 months, and again, a lot has changed in that time.
Yeah, it's been crazy, Trent, and obviously there's been a lot of press around people moving out of the cities and into the regions, and I just like everyone to be a little bit careful about that. A lot of that press is generated from the East Coast, and obviously structurally they're quite different to WA. Their distances to the regions are much smaller than ours. But our regional market is absolutely hot as well at the moment, as well as Perth Metro. And we can go around some of those locations and have a look at them. Yeah.
You know what's funny? This is the first time you have not qualified that by saying Karratha. You've said the regional market as a blanket.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
Where do you want to start?
Let's start where it's hottest, and that's that holiday mecca of Dunsborough. So that southwest marketplace is going absolutely crazy at the moment. It is at the same types of activity levels and price growth as the western suburbs, as your Cottesloes.
Is it the same money?
Well, potentially it's the same money, yeah, which is really interesting. And obviously the beginning of that panic buying, so to speak, came when people understood that they wouldn't be allowed to travel overseas for the next couple of years and that they needed to be able to secure a holiday home. They went online.
They needed to.
Yeah.
Did they?
Well, the scenario is you go online, I'll just go and rent that property that we've always rented or one of those luxury homes that I like, and that's how we'll work out our holiday plan. And suddenly they're all full too. So how will I solve the problem? I've got money. That's it. I'll just go buy one.
I'm going to have to buy it. That's a shame.
Yeah.
The interesting thing about you starting with Dunsborough is the last time we spoke about Dunsborough, the theme had been for the last year or so that there was a blip about a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago. But then actually since then and up till, well, I don't know, Christmas, it's been a bit disappointing.
Yeah. And then,
what?
On the way into Christmas, it started to heat up, and then on the back end of January, February, it's been absolutely crazy. So, there were some standout transactions towards the end of last year where stock started to get cleaned out, and now we're in the zone of people offering well over what asking prices are. The FOMO kicking right in. A lack of supply is a massive issue in terms of people that have longed after being in holiday properties in certain locations. I want to be in Gracetown, or I want to be in Dunsborough, or I want to be in Margaret River, and then finding that there's actually nothing to buy there.
I've actually noticed, and this is a great signpost to what's going on there, there's an infill project on the corner of the ocean and the main strip. I don't know what the street name is there, but it looks like a fantastic project. But that wouldn't happen if it wasn't supported by, one, the planning system there, but also the public demand.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And so, and there's also those stories that we will have seen in terms of the market moving downward over a number of years, where people simply couldn't sell some of the product down there. I've got a lifestyle lot in the middle of the bush, and it costs a bit of money to maintain and that kind of stuff. We've stopped going down. It's excess to our requirements. We want to sell it now, and they're literally was no demand in the last few years. Yeah, or within 2 or 3 years ago. It's amazing to flip that switch and end up in a market now where everything would be selling.
Do you think we like Dunsborough the way it is? Do you think that one day it will be a Byron Bay?
Number one, I think the Dunsborough town centre is pretty ordinary. Unfortunately, it's evolved over a period of time, and it's got a big roundabout in the middle of it, and everyone wants to drive through the centre. They've got a planning issue that they need to solve there over a period of time. Having said that, obviously everyone loves the place because of all of the surrounds. I think it'll maintain its own character over a long period of time. I think the difference to some of those East Coast locations is that we're more spread out down there, which is always the WA angle, isn't it? Perth Metro is more spread out than any other capital city in Australia. Similar down there, so you don't end up with that look at me type scenario in those locations down there. Yeah.
Dunsborough on the hop, is it too hot already, or if you're still looking for a holiday home, do you look somewhere else?
Yeah, so it is white hot, and you just need to consider your options in there and do your research. Where we've seen contracts that we're struggling to support where, if you're not coming with cash, you're not going to be able to buy the place. Yeah.
What's next?
So if we go down to probably swing round down into Albany, a really hot market down there at the moment, 2/3 offers on all types of product, locals scrambling to buy further product because they understand that they're coming out off the bottom of the market, investors trying to buy in, people trying to buy holiday homes for themselves, but also trying to buy holiday homes to rent out on the short-term market as well.
Why do we think that is? I was down in Albany for Christmas, and it is a beautiful part of the world. I'd never been there before, and it felt like I was in a different country, to be honest. It's very unique.
Is that because it was 15 degrees cooler than Perth?
That was one of the reasons. It was raining one of the days.
Yeah.
More to the point, it doesn't really have a lot of industry that's pushing it, and it's a little bit far away for people to be going down for the weekend.
Yeah.
So why is there a push towards more demand in Albany? I can understand Dunsborough, I can understand the mining towns, but what's Albany bringing to the table?
Yeah, so I think it is that holiday market, and I think it is a case of people considering locations. So obviously there's a percentage of the population that would prefer Albany over and Denmark over, say, Dunsborough. Both of those locations down there, as in Albany and Denmark, are, as you say, it is just an absolutely beautiful part of the world. Probably a bit of, one of those classic WA secrets where Herons of White have got offices across the country. We've got 800 people working for us. I don't end up in Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane with people saying, hey, I'm going to go to Albany. So they talk to me about going to see the whale sharks, and they talk about Broome all the time, those kinds of locations, and obviously talk about Margaret River in terms of wine. But it's just one of those ones that doesn't get promoted well enough, and it's a WA holiday destination, not an Australian holiday destination.
Yeah. I still don't know where it's coming from with regards to Albany.
Yeah.
But it's nice to see because it has been struggling for quite a while.
Yep.
Is Esperance getting the same push, I guess?
Yeah, so Esperance is interesting because it is that a whole lot further away, 8 or 9 hour drive, or you can fly down there.
It's its own market.
Yep.
I would have thought the only people that are buying and selling there are people that live there.
Yeah, and so that market, hasn't got the same heat as an Albany, but it's still has been underpinned over a long period of time by some very decent money. So money that comes in there out of the farming community. And if anything, the industry in there really underpins that town. So because the regional location to the north, all of that wheat and sheep farms have done so well over a period of time, that money's flowed into a place like Esperance. And that probably gives you a little bit of an indication on Albany as well.
Maybe it's because of the cheap money. This is when you buy things.
Yep.
And you just wouldn't buy it even if you had the money 5 years ago because it was more expensive to do so. Should we just head directly north to Kalgoorlie?
Yeah. So Cal's pretty interesting.
You've not liked Cal for a long time.
Don't throw me under the Kalgoorlie bus, the Kalgoorlie ore truck.
Yeah.
They have had some really good activity. I think last time we talked, we did have those land sales stats. Remember we were talking about 6 lots had flown out the door really quickly, I think?
Yeah, you'd gone ice cold to lukewarm last time on Kalgoorlie.
Yeah. So good activity in there. It's probably, in terms of a location that is lacking a bit of activity, it's probably Cal. Obviously, it's not on anyone's radar. Really, it's a holiday destination. Gold mining obviously underpins the economy there. Gold price down at the minute, which is really interesting given the way that the equities markets are performing and stupid things like Bitcoin are going. Pretty keen on the location because the fundamentals are underpinned for the future in Kalgoorlie.
The price is still so cheap. The one thing that I would warn people on is when you read the magazines, especially the national magazines, and they just pump out the rental yields. You'll see places like Kundana and Kanowna, so place Boulder, for example, with 13% rental yields, and you can buy a property for $130,000 out there, and you think, geez, I'm going to buy 3 of them. The reality is that rental yield of 13% on $120,000 is $15,000 a year.
Yeah.
And you're probably spending $5,000 on maintenance and insurance out there anyway.
Yeah.
So you're not making a whole bunch. Don't get overexcited about this.
Yeah.
And remember that it is a swing town. It can go up to 100 to 200 and then right back down to 100 very quickly. And you might not be able to sell for 12 months.
Yeah. When you're buying in the regional locations, doesn't matter what location it's in, you're really got to consider whether you're going to buy something that you're not going to go and look at. You have to make sure that you're going to be prepared to jump on a plane and go there.
Yep. Newman would be next, wouldn't it?
Yeah, if we're going in a nice big loop. Yeah, so Newman is returning or rebounding post-mining decrease in activity. There's a lot of stock in that town to be absorbed yet. It's certainly bounced off its lowest ebb. The values are rising, but they're not rising rapidly.
Geraldton?
Gerro is really an interesting town. It's really, in our opinion, struggling a bit to get back on its feet. Another place that I'd be less confident, say, than a Kalgoorlie, where the fundamentals seem to be so solid.
At least as an industry.
Yeah.
Even if it's just one industry in Kalgoorlie. Yeah.
So Gerro's just struggling along. There's some really cheap stock in there. It's trying to find its feet. The town centre is still struggling in terms of excess property in there and some things that are essentially driving,
social issues
dragging
as well.
Things backwards in terms of the livability of the town. But on the back end of that is there's still some really great lifestyle properties there, and it's also a pretty beautiful place to live. And, obviously the locals have really good reason to live there, and it's a great bit of coastline. So, yeah.
In our settlements team, we've actually seen quite a few files come through from Exmouth.
Yeah, I'll bet you have, because
never
the
had
place is
before.
sold out.
Yeah.
It's pretty crazy. Talking to the local agents up there, I was up there kind of 3 weeks ago or so. It's interesting to see that.
Are you looking to buy something, Brendo?
I'm not sure about that. No, I was just doing some valuations. Yeah. From our point of view, we've moved from a stage in that market where there's a lot of purchase activity, and we were on a plane every couple of weeks doing lots of valuations to help with purchase. Now we're actually starting to do valuations for refinance. So it's the micro market of what's going on in Perth, where the locals have gone, beauty, values are back.
Finally, below 80%.
Yeah, and it's safe to get my house valued. It doesn't matter what your LVR is. When the market's down and the value's gone below what you either paid for it or it cost you to build, it's not the most fantastic idea to have a val on file at the bank. So with that rebound in prices, it brings further activity, and also people obviously redrawing on equity and going to spend some more money. Yeah.
There's nearly nothing available in these places like Exmouth, for example.
Yeah, so the other really interesting thing that we saw there was some locally based high net worth people go and buy into the marina in there. So those blocks had been sitting there for 5 years on the market.
Probably 3/4 of them still empty.
Yep, spot on. And then so the volume of sales in there, I think we worked out there was 26 blocks sold within a month or so after the grants were announced in that Exmouth Marina. So created stampede of activity. And again, just fascinating analysis of a market. Where were all those buyers while all those proper lots sat on the market for that long period of time? Admittedly, there were vendors that would have been sitting there going, I will not sell until the market returns to a certain level. I just want my money back on this thing.
So they weren't even available. Yeah.
So they're technically not available. But then obviously there was pent-up demand sitting around waiting to move in there.
When people build homes in places like Exmouth, are they building steel frame?
Yeah, a variety of. Yeah, so mainly steel frame. So the local builders that are based up there would build concrete slab, steel frame, and clad internally and externally. They seem to build a really decent product up there. So the houses that we've seen up there are really good quality.
They don't depreciate any quicker than a brick home?
No, definitely not. And obviously they've got cyclone requirements and those kinds of things up there, and the quality of finish is really good. The other product that we see in there is transportable homes. So something that might be constructed in a yard in Maddington in Perth here and then chucked on a truck. They look a lot different these days to what they have in the past. So listeners that have a donger in their head as an imagination, some of this product you can't tell the difference as to whether it's been, once it's on site and established, it's really difficult to tell the difference between whether it's built in Maddington in a shed or built on site.
There's a lot of amazing technology these days with CNC machines. And we're not talking about 3D printing these plastic homes. These are prefabbed companies called Offsite, and they're doing some really crazy stuff that I think is an interesting time right now in building, given how expensive it's become to build. I think it's going to create, again, culture shift through necessity. Some people are going to move, hopefully, to a critical mass away from brick as the one and only, towards options like timber, to an extent steel frame as well, which are just as good build quality and they last just as long, but they're not double brick, obviously.
Yeah, and there's not a lot of double brick housing, in the regions anyway, in WA.
No brick,
yeah.
But that's where people find it acceptable.
Yeah.
But they don't find it acceptable in
Perth Metro. It's
Yeah.
pretty funny.
Yeah.
Now, just to pause while we're talking regions, in particular Kalgoorlie round and to the northwest, people just need to be careful about their building costs there. So don't go and buy yourself flippantly a block of cheap land and think that you will build a house there for the same cost as Perth. It's going to be nearly double.
Yeah.
Easily double.
Yeah, sometimes more than double, I would have thought.
Exactly. So just be really careful about that.
Talking about building costs, Karratha is a good example of where it costs, $700,000 to build a $300,000 home in Perth.
Yeah, exactly. And so that obviously is why there's always a supply issue up in those northwest regions as well. Karratha's going well at the moment. It seems to be going in fits and starts from what we can see. So there'll be a hive of activity for a few weeks. Some supply will come to the market. It'll get absorbed. There might be a slight price increase on the previous transactions. There'll be a lull, probably led by the fact that there's not that many listings, and then there'll be some more that hit the market, and the same thing will happen. So it's kind of a juttering return. And again, we're in a situation where the market is at odds with itself or arguing with itself as to whether the time is right to continue to commence construction of single residential dwellings in there
Well, it's
again.
still a bet at the end of the day.
Yeah, and we've seen some big transactions in there, multiple lot purchases from individuals going to buy a whole lot of vacant land in there. Obviously, they're picking that was the bottom of the market. They've bought up, and now we wait and see whether they build one house or 10 houses. See what the scenario plays out.
It still costs that much to build a home, and the median price is still not $700,000 plus land value.
Yep.
So it is still a bet. But if you bet now and you bet right, then you're possibly ahead of the game.
Yeah, and the angle there, obviously, the investor is looking for is to get a really decent rental return.
Would you have the balls to buy in Karratha right now?
No, I'd be looking in other locations, but that's just because that's not on my preference list.
But if you took that away personally, maybe let's just look at it a bit more objectively. Do you think it's already too risky?
Yeah, from a risk point of view, well, number one, let's just be really clear that you miss any bargain. That time's well and truly past 2 or 3 years ago.
Yep.
Let's also look at what happened in the last boom, where values went up for a nice dwelling 4x2 in a good location in there were over $1 million. They're heading towards 1.5.
And then they went down to 400.
And then they dropped by 66%, definitively by 66%. So do your risk assessment. Why you'd be buying in there would be to chase yield, and you would be wanting to make sure that you're getting at least a 10% yield, maybe more.
Unless you're an owner-occupier who's flush with money and not worried about the value of their home at any point in time, you would have thought, again, what goes up must go down at some point, and you'd have to have an exit strategy.
Yeah. Yep. And
a couple of years of chasing the wave and then get out, and some silly bugger with his self-made superannuation fund's going to sell it, buy it off you for $1 million. History repeats itself, Brendon.
It does. Yeah. And I can't see why it wouldn't go back to those numbers. So there's the tip for the listeners in terms of those people ready to take a risk. But just please make sure that that's not advice that you're listening to. You do your own assessment.
It's a super opportunity right now. If you had a very agile eye on the market, you had ears on the ground, and you were happy to get in and out in 2 to 3 years as a maximum, I'd be very nervous holding any property after the next 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
Recognize when you've made a win and then cash it out.
Yep. Yeah. But that's
hubris.
Yeah, exactly.
Lastly, Port Hedland.
Maybe start with South or join the whole lot together. It doesn't matter either way, really, because essentially we've seen the oversupply soaked up. Probably, again, that kind of late December, early January time where there were the last few cheap products around where investors were coming through going, look, there's still a one better at 140 odd grand. I'll go and grab that. And we could see that market listing just slowly ebbing away. Right, that one's gone, that one's gone, that one's gone.
Because that was the theme of your last chat, it was that, look, Port Hedland's looking good, but we still haven't seen the crazy yet.
Yeah, and so there's solid. So we're almost at that outer supply stage, and now we're seeing that value growth stage. It's not white hot value growth like it is in Perth Metro and those southwest region, but the value growth is there. There's also the Port Hedland buyback scheme going on in there at the moment, so people can go and do their own research about what's going on, but I won't comment on whether that skews the market or anything, but it does mean that there's a fair portion in Port Hedland, I think it's 450 odd houses, where vendors are sitting on their hands, really, because they're not going to transact whilst there's a process going in terms of potentially buying out their house. So anyone buying into the area just needs to be conscious that that's happening in the background and it's skewing market activity.
On a broad base, though, you're positive for the regions.
Yeah, and we might as well skip up to Broome as well.
Oh, we missed Broome. Go Broome.
We're still going up the coast.
Sorry.
So, Broome's going well. Probably lagged some of the other regions in terms of getting that activity moving, and maybe that was just because it was wet season up there as everything else started changing.
Isn't Broome pumping, isn't it? You can't even get a hotel room or a place at the bar for a quiet beer in Broome.
Well, that was the back end of last year. That will be obviously the story in season this year as well. And so I'd expect the market, market's going well now, and I would expect the market to take off as we get out of wet season and into tourist season. Yeah. And their main problem up there, as it is in the southwest, as it is in Perth Metro, is they've got to try and get some people there to work. No one's holiday experience is going to be any good unless there's someone there to serve them. Yeah. I'm really surprised that hasn't been an issue that's been at the forefront of the election, that we need casual workers in all of WA, in particular in the hospitality industry, to come and make it a nice place to visit.
I think they just, they've always for so long just relied on the Italians, the Frenchmen, the Dutch to go up there on their 1 year working holiday visa and live the life. And I don't know, do you know anyone that would like to work in Broome?
I reckon there'd be a whole lot of Balinese that'd be pretty happy to come and work in
I'm sure
hospitality
in
WA.
Yeah.
I reckon we should get on the front foot and go, those Balinese people have helped us out in the past and always looked after us on holiday. They should all get a special visa to come and work in WA for a year.
That's a really good idea. But the fact that with this new federal subsidy coming in and only Broome is the only WA place that's going to get a leg up from the East Coast. Yep. But still, that should be a massive jump in people coming through there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And having spoken to my colleagues that hang out in Victoria, they are really over last winter. They will all be looking for Queensland coast, and obviously Broome is similar climate. They really want to get out of Victoria this winter. I would be very surprised if they're not flooding into Broome. Yep.
What's the theme of the story for the regions this time?
I suppose sustainability is another question for it. How sustainable are those prices over a longer period of time? We're always concerned about that as conservative valuers. And probably infrastructure. I did a panel session with the API and REWA at the start of the year in January, and it just called out the phone infrastructure. So it's all great that everyone talks about people going to work from home, and now the world's changed and we can all work from the regions, and I'll buy a holiday house somewhere and go in there and work. We still have massive issues in our Bustleton office. When the caravan park down the road is fully occupied, the internet speed of our office drops through the floor.
The old copper wires. Yeah.
And then the same when I go to Exmouth and I'm trying to upload jobs in the evening. So pretty simple data packet flicking down the line to the bank, and you can't push anything through. Something that takes 1 minute to upload in Perth Metro, and you're sitting there with a spinning wheel for 20 minutes, half an hour, because everyone's on Netflix in the evening. So I'd just call out someone needs to do something about, in particular, internet infrastructure in those regional locations.
Yeah, well, and that's the small things that stop people making serious long-term decisions to live there.
So you can't go to your holiday home and spend a week there working from home if you know that your internet is not going to work all day, every day, seamlessly. Yeah.
Good point. Well, I think it's risk for reward, and there's risk always in all regional areas, and you want to probably find a place that you see reward.
Yep.
I'm still a fan of Newman. I don't think we've seen enough reward yet for what the risk is.
Yep.
I think Port Hedland has still got its opportunities as well. I'd be super nervous about Karratha, but I'm sure there are a lot of people that'll make another 300-400 grand over the next couple of years if they did make the call. The rest of the place, personally, I think a lot about its owner-occupied stuff that I'll leave them to their lifestyle choices.
And then the other thing for people to consider is, in particular, if they're looking for a holiday home, there is a cycle. Things will obviously out of control in some locations at the moment, but that will settle down into the future, and maybe consider do you need that holiday
Chill
home
out.
right now?
Yeah.
Or do you need it in the next cycle in 5 years' time? Yeah.
Good point. Brendon Ptolomey, thank you very much for coming in again, mate. That's 25 minutes of gold, as always.
Cheers, Trent.
Speak
lot
to
of fun.
you in the next quarter with, Jesus, I don't know what the theme's going to be.
Let's wait and see where we're at next
Yeah,
time.
the question will be what's not hot, maybe.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Cheers, mate. Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Perth Property Show. If you've only just joined the conversation, you can catch up by heading over to our website, perthpropertyshow.com.au, subscribing to the podcast, or joining our Facebook page. Don't forget to tune in next Monday at 7 a.m. for more expert insights, local analysis, and suburb spotlights. Happy hunting!